The rhythmic pulse of the radar swept across the screen, hypnotic green glow painting the darkened room. Li Yu's fingers danced over the keyboard, inputting coordinates, her voice calm and precise as she guided the incoming flight. Central South 9133, CX-886, descend and maintain 3,000 feet. Cleared for ILS approach runway 27. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the tarmac. Another day, another string of successful landings. But beneath the professional composure, a tremor of anticipation, a nervous flutter, ran through her. Tonight. The reunion. And him. Li Fujian. The very thought of his name sent a strange warmth coursing through her veins, a sensation she'd carried, secretly nurtured, since high school. He probably wouldn't even remember her, she thought, a wave of self-doubt washing over the initial excitement. It had been 10 years, after all. 10 years since she'd been the shy, awkward girl with a secret crush on the charismatic, popular boy. 10 years she'd spent meticulously crafting a life she could be proud of, a life she hoped would finally catch his eye. Her phone buzzed, the insistent vibration breaking her concentration. Li Yu, speaking, she answered, her voice still carrying the professional crispness from her air traffic control directives. Yeah, it's Mom. Just got off work. Her mother's voice, ever practical, ever concerned, crackled through the receiver. Yes, Mom, she replied, her gaze still fixed on the radar screen, a new blip appearing on the edge. Another flight inbound. Don't forget to meet the boy your mother introduced you tomorrow, her mother continued, her tone laced with the familiar blend of urging and gentle reprimand. He's a doctor, very successful. Stable. Just what you need. Li Yu sighed inwardly. This again. The constant, subtle pressure to settle down. At 28, unmarried, she was an anomaly in her family, a source of both worry and whispered speculation. Mom, I just got off work, she began, the familiar argument forming on her lips. No excuses, yeah, her mother interrupted, her voice firm. You're not getting any younger. Mom, Li Yu insisted, her voice taking on a slightly sharper edge, I have someone I like. The words tumbled out before she could stop them, a confession forced out by years of suppressed feelings. A beat of silence. Then, oh. Who is this young man? Someone from work. It's Li Fujian, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. The name felt both exhilarating and terrifying to speak aloud. You remember? My high school classmate. The one who became a pilot. Her mother's response was immediate, a mixture of surprise and skepticism. Li Fujian. But I thought wasn't he already attached? Li Yu's stomach clenched. Her mother's words echoed a fear that had been gnawing at her. She'd heard whispers, seen fleeting pictures on social media. A beautiful, elegant woman always by his side. I don't know, she admitted, the fragile hope she'd harbored beginning to crack. I'll see him tonight. The reunion was being held at a trendy cafe near the airport, a place buzzing with conversations and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Li Yu hesitated at the entrance, her heart pounding against her ribs. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside, her eyes scanning the crowd. And there he was. Li Fujian. Taller, even more handsome than she remembered, his laughter resonating through the room. He was surrounded by a group of former classmates, their faces etched with the familiar blend of nostalgia and polite inquiries about careers and families. As she approached, their conversation shifted, the initial warmth replaced by a subtle coolness. Ning Yuxiu, her former classmate and now a successful businesswoman, gave her a pointed once-over, her eyes narrowed in assessment. Meng Liue. Is that really you? The question hung in the air, laced with a hint of disbelief. It's Li Yu now, she corrected gently, trying to ignore the sting of the thinly veiled insult. Dropping the "meng" had been a conscious decision, a way to distance herself from the awkward, insecure girl she'd once been. "Oh, of course," Ning Yushu replied, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "Li Yu, the high-flying air traffic controller. We heard you're practically running the airport these days." The words were meant to be a compliment, but the underlying tone suggested something else entirely: envy, perhaps, or even resentment. Li Fuzheng, seemingly oblivious to the undercurrents of tension, smiled warmly. "Li Yu. It's great to see you. It's been ages." His eyes, however, didn't linger. They darted past her, towards the entrance. And then, she saw her. Su Moding. Elegant, poised, radiating an aura of wealth and privilege. She glided towards them, her hand possessively resting on Li Fuzheng's arm. The introduction was curt, perfunctory. Su Moding barely acknowledged Li Yu, her eyes flickering with disinterest. The conversation shifted again, revolving around Su Moding's latest business ventures, her exotic travels, her designer handbag. Li Yu felt herself shrinking, the carefully constructed confidence she'd built over the years crumbling under the weight of Su Moding's blatant disregard. Later, as she sat alone at a small table, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, a wave of despair washed over her. It was clear. Li Fuzheng was happy. He had moved on. And she was just a ghost from his past, a fleeting memory he barely recognized. The evening continued, a blur of forced smiles and strained conversations. As the reunion drew to a close, Li Yu found herself standing outside the cafe with Li Fuzheng. Su Moding had already left, claiming an early morning meeting. A sudden downpour had begun, the rain coming down in sheets. He offered her a ride home. Inside his car, the silence was thick with unspoken words. As he pulled up outside her apartment building, Li Yu turned to him, a bittersweet smile playing on her lips. "Thank you for the ride," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the drumming of the rain. He stared straight ahead for a moment before responding. He turned to Li Yu, his eyes searching hers. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice laced with regret. "I know I've been distant. My life. It's been complicated." He opened his mouth as if to continue, then stopped. He looked tired, a shadow of doubt crossing his face. "I wish things could have been different," he murmured almost to himself, glancing down momentarily. He then looked up, meeting her eyes. "Can we talk?" Back at her apartment, Li Yu was greeted by her mother's concerned face. Li Qingzheng hadn't heard of the reunion. "You look pale, Yaya," her mother said, her hand reaching out to touch her forehead. "Are you all right?" A sigh escaped her lips, frustration mixing with worry in her voice. "Did you meet that doctor boy? I hope you weren't rude to him. He's got a very prominent family." Li Yu managed a weak smile. "I'll tell you all about it later, Mom. Let's not talk about the doctor right now. Fuzheng is here. He wants to talk." It was only now, within the familiar comforts of her home, that she allowed herself to feel the flicker of hope again. Maybe things weren't as clear-cut as they had seemed. Perhaps, beneath the surface of his seemingly perfect life, Li Fuzheng was carrying his own burdens, his own secrets. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could finally find the courage to tell him how she truly felt. The cafe buzzed with the low hum of conversation, the clatter of cutlery against china, and the rhythmic whir of the espresso machine. Li Yu nervously smoothed the wrinkles from her simple, navy blue dress. The faint scent of roasted coffee beans mingled with the sugary sweetness of pastries, a combination that usually soothed her, but today, her stomach churned with a nervous energy that no amount of caffeine could quell. He was late. Or perhaps she was early. She checked her watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. He wouldn't stand me up, would he? My mother would never let me live it down. The thought brought a wry smile to her lips. A blind date. At 28, it felt like a desperate measure, a concession to societal expectations. Little did she know, fate had a twisted sense of humor. A familiar figure finally emerged from the afternoon glare streaming through the cafe's entrance. Li Fuzhen. Her heart leaped, then plummeted. He hadn't changed much. Still that same easy confidence, the same windswept hair that seemed perpetually tousled by an unseen breeze. He scanned the room, a slight frown creasing his brow. Li Yu's breath caught in her throat. He doesn't recognize me. After all these years a wave of disappointment washed over her, a bitter undercurrent to the anticipation she'd been harboring. Li Fuzhen, she asked, her voice barely a whisper, laced with a nervousness she couldn't quite disguise. He turned, his eyes meeting hers with a polite, but distant curiosity. Meng Liyue, he questioned, the name sounding foreign on his tongue. It's Li Yu, she corrected, a flicker of hurt flashing across her face, quickly masked by a forced smile. Meng Liyue from high school. Recognition finally dawned in his eyes, followed by a look of genuine surprise. Wow, it's been ages. You've changed. Changed. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Li Yu's internal monologue swirled. Changed? Is that good or bad? Does he even remember anything? They settled into awkward small talk, the years of separation stretching between them like a chasm. He spoke of his career as a pilot, the long hours, the constant travel. She listened intently, offering the occasional comment, her mind racing with memories of their shared youth, the shy glances, the stolen moments. He seemed oblivious, lost in his own world, the easy charm she remembered now tinged with a certain aloofness. The conversation drifted towards family, the inevitable pressures of settling down. My mom keeps setting me up on these blind dates, he confessed, a rueful smile playing on his lips. She says it's a terrible crime not to be married at 30. Li Yu echoed his sentiment, my mom says 28 is the cutoff for respectability. A shared laugh, a moment of connection. Maybe, just maybe a flicker of hope ignited within her. The chime of the cafe door announced a new arrival. A woman, tall and elegant, strode towards their table, her designer handbag swinging rhythmically with each step. Su Moding. Li Fuzhen's girlfriend. Li Yu recognized her instantly, the same condescending smile, the same air of superiority that had haunted her high school years. Fuzhen, darling, I'm so sorry I'm late, Su Moding purred, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. Her eyes flicked over Li Yu, a barely perceptible sneer twisting her lips. Oh, you're here. The unspoken disdain hung heavy in the air. Li Yu felt a familiar knot tightening in her stomach. Here we go again. Moding, this is Meng Li Yu, an old friend from high school, Li Fuzhen introduced, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling beneath the surface. Su Moding's eyes narrowed, assessing Li Yu from head to toe. Li Yu. You've changed. I don't think you look like 28 at all. The words were laced with a venomous sweetness. It's just plastic surgery, right? She added, her voice dripping with false concern. Li Yu's cheeks flushed. The cafe suddenly felt too warm, the air too thick to breathe. I haven't, she began, but Su Moding cut her off. Oh, don't be embarrassed. Everyone does it these days. I heard well, never mind. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I heard that you became the mistress of an old man with money. The word struck Li Yu like a physical blow. Her mind reeled, the years melting away, revealing the raw wounds of high school insecurities, the whispers and rumors that had plagued her. Ning Yushu, another familiar face from the past, materialized beside Su Moding, a smug smile playing on her lips. "Oh, is this her?" Ning Yushu chimed in, her voice laced with mock surprise. "I remember her. Always so quiet. Who knew she had such ambitions?" Li Yu's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. The cafe, the coffee, the gentle hum of conversation all faded into the background. All that remained was the burning humiliation, the resurrected ghosts of her past. Why? Why now? Why him? She looked at Li Fuzhen, searching his face for a flicker of understanding, a hint of support. But he seemed lost, caught in the crossfire, his brow furrowed in confusion. The weight of the situation, the tangled web of misunderstandings and long-held resentments, threatened to suffocate her. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. This wasn't the reunion she'd dreamed of. The apartment felt strangely quiet after the whirlwind of the day. Li Yu stood by the window, the city lights blurring through a film of unshed tears. Her reflection stared back, a stranger in familiar clothes. Was this really happening? Li Fuzhen, the boy who occupied her every teenage fantasy, was here, in her apartment. But the joy was a fragile thing, constantly threatened by the shadows of the past. Had he really not recognized her? Or was it a convenient excuse, a shield against the whispers that had followed her for years? He emerged from the kitchen, 2 mugs steaming in his hands. The soft clinking as he set one down on the coffee table beside her jolted her back to the present. "Jasmine tea," he said, his voice gentle. "My mother always said it calms the nerves." Li Yu managed a weak smile. Her nerves weren't just frayed, they were screaming. "Thanks." She took a sip, the warmth spreading through her, a small comfort in the vast uncertainty. He sat on the sofa opposite her, a careful distance separating them. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken words. Li Yu watched him, her heart a trapped bird fluttering against her ribs. The years had been kind to him, sharpening his features, adding a touch of weariness around his eyes that only intensified his appeal. The same unruly lock of hair kept falling onto his forehead, just like it did in high school. She remembered sketching it in her notebooks, dreaming of a day she could brush it away with her fingers. I didn't realize we went to high school together," he finally said, his voice low. He avoided her gaze, focusing on the steam rising from his mug. Li Yu's stomach twisted. So, it was true. He really hadn't recognized her. All those stolen glances, all the whispered conversations with Ning Yushu about him he hadn't even noticed. A bitter laugh threatened to escape her lips. "You didn't," she echoed, her voice flat. "So you didn't recognize me at the cafe either." He looked up then, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "No. I'm sorry. I wasn't very observant back then. And you've changed." Changed. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Had she changed so much that he couldn't see the girl who had worshipped him from afar? Or was it the whispers, the rumors that had distorted his perception of her? He shifted uncomfortably, the silence returning, even more oppressive than before. Finally, he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "About my mother being the other woman, I know that's what people said. But it wasn't true. My father, he was already separated. They just hadn't finalized the divorce yet." Li Yu's breath hitched. The rumors. The whispers. They had followed her for years, a constant shadow clinging to her heels. Her mother's brief relationship with Li Fuzhen's father had become the scandal of their small town, and she, by association, had become the target of everyone's judgment. The memory of Ning Yushu's cruel taunts, the ostracization, the shame, it all came flooding back, suffocating her. I know," she managed to choke out, the words catching in her throat. She had always known, deep down, that her mother wasn't a homewrecker. But the whispers had been so loud, so persistent, that they had almost drowned out the truth. He looked at her, his eyes searching hers. I should have said something back then. I should have defended her. Defended you. It doesn't matter now, she whispered, turning away. The years of hurt and resentment welled up inside her, threatening to spill over. It's all in the past. Is it? He asked softly. Because it seems to me like the past is still very much present. His words pierced through her defenses. She turned back to him, her eyes brimming with tears. I don't want to pursue this with you anymore, she said, her voice trembling. The words felt like a betrayal, a rejection of the fragile hope that had blossomed within her. But the weight of the past was too heavy, the wounds too deep. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. Why? Because it's too complicated, she stammered. Because of everything that happened back then. Because of what people said. He stood up, closing the distance between them. He reached out, his hand hovering hesitantly over her cheek. Liu, she flinched, pulling away. Meng Liu, she corrected him, her voice cold. My name is Meng Liu. He dropped his hand, his expression a mixture of confusion and hurt. What? My name is Meng Liu, she repeated, her voice rising. Not just Liu, like everyone else called me. Meng. Liu. He stared at her, a flicker of recognition finally dawning in his eyes. Meng Liu, he repeated slowly. The girl who always topped the class. The girl who he trailed off, his eyes widening. You're Meng Liu? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, she whispered. I'm Meng Liu. A long silence hung between them, broken only by the sound of her soft sobs. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and something else. Something that looked a lot like understanding. He took a step closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Have you considered getting married? The question hung in the air, unexpected, almost surreal. Liu looked at him, her mind reeling. Married? With him? After all these years, after all the hurt and misunderstandings? He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. This time, she didn't pull away. His thumb brushed away a tear, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. I know this is a lot to take in, he said softly. But I feel like I've finally found you again. The girl I admired from afar. The girl I never had the courage to talk to. Liu's heart soared. He remembered. He had noticed her, even back then. The years of insecurity, of feeling invisible, melted away under the warmth of his gaze. Li Fuzheng, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. It's Meng Liu, he corrected her gently, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. And yes, I remember. I remember everything. The cafe's warm glow, a stark contrast to the bruised purple sky outside, offered little comfort. Liu stirred her iced coffee, the clinking of the ice against the glass a rhythmic counterpoint to the erratic drumming of her heart. Li Fuzheng's flight, scheduled to depart an hour ago, was grounded due to the sudden thunderstorm. He'd sent a quick text, apologizing for the abrupt end to their conversation, the words clipped and professional, a stark reminder of the distance that stretched between them. He probably thinks I'm just another old classmate, she thought, the ice in her glass melting into a watery metaphor for her dissolving hopes. Across the room, Ning Yushu and her entourage giggled, their whispers like venomous darts aimed directly at Liu. She knew they were talking about her, dissecting her every word, every gesture. The familiar sting of high school insecurities, buried deep for years, resurfaced with a vengeance. Why do they still hold on to this? It was years ago. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she was no longer that insecure teenager. She had built a life, a career, a sense of self-worth that their petty whispers couldn't touch. Or so she told herself. The cafe door opened, and Li Fuzheng walked in, his pilot uniform a beacon amidst the civilian attire. He looked tired, the strain of the delayed flight evident in the lines around his eyes. He spotted Li Yu, a flicker of recognition in his gaze, but it was quickly replaced by a polite, almost detached smile. He was accompanied by another pilot, a jovial man who clapped him on the back and launched into a boisterous account of a near miss on the runway. Li Yu watched, a familiar ache blossoming in her chest. He didn't even come over to talk. The lightning is getting pretty intense, a voice beside her said. Lu Huaizhi, his brow furrowed with concern, gestured towards the window. The storm, mirroring her inner turmoil, raged with a ferocity that threatened to shatter the calm facade she had meticulously constructed. It's probably going to be a while before they can fly, he added, his voice gentle, laced with an understanding that warmed her more than the cafe's weak heating. She managed a small smile, grateful for his presence, a quiet anchor in the turbulent sea of her emotions. Li Fuzheng glanced at Li Yu again, a fleeting moment of something akin to concern crossing his features. He excused himself from his colleague and walked toward her, his steps hesitant, as if navigating an unfamiliar terrain. Looks like we're both stuck here for a while, he said, his voice a low rumble that resonated deep within her. He's talking to me. He actually came over. Hope, a fragile butterfly, stirred within her. It seems so, Li Yu replied, her voice betraying none of the inner turmoil. She forced herself to meet his gaze, to maintain a casual composure that belied the frantic beating of her heart. About what I said earlier, Li Fuzheng began, his voice trailing off, his gaze drifting to the window where the lightning illuminated the churning sky. He seemed to struggle with the words, the silence stretching between them, thick with unspoken emotions. What was he about to say? What did he want to say? The anticipation was almost unbearable. He turned back to her, his expression resolute. I'll take you. I'll be ready at any time. The organic chief can't fly under special circumstances. The words tumbled out, disjointed, cryptic, leaving Li Yu more confused than ever. What does he mean? Is he offering to take me somewhere? But why? A flash of lightning illuminated the cafe, momentarily blinding her. In that brief moment of darkness, she heard a gasp from behind. Su Moting, her face contorted with a mixture of surprise and fury, stood at the entrance, her designer bag clutched tightly in her hand. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted, the air crackling with tension. Ning Yushu and her friends exchanged knowing glances, their whispers intensifying, feeding on the drama unfolding before them. Li Yu felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. Why now? Why does she always have to appear at the worst possible moment? Su Moting strode towards them, her heels clicking against the tiled floor like a countdown to a confrontation. Fuzheng, darling, she purred, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness that couldn't mask the underlying venom. I was so worried when I heard about the delay. I thought I'd come and rescue you. She cast a dismissive glance at Li Yu, her eyes filled with contempt. I didn't realize you had company. The tension in Li Fuzheng's shoulders was palpable. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could utter a word, Li Yu cut him off. Actually, she said, her voice steady, surprisingly firm, we were just finishing up. I was just about to leave. Leaving? Su Moting raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. So soon? But you haven't heard the latest news, have you? She turned to Li Fuzheng, a malicious glint in her eyes. Darling, you should tell her. Tell her about your promotion. Li Fuzheng looked from Su Moting to Li Yu, his expression a mixture of confusion and discomfort. My promotion, he repeated, his voice hesitating. Su Moting let out a theatrical sigh. Honestly, Fuzheng, you're so modest. You should be proud. You've been chosen as the organic chief. It's a huge honor. She turned back to Li Yu, her smile condescending. It means he'll be flying the most important routes, representing the airline on a global scale. He'll be very busy, very important. Li Yu felt a pang of something she couldn't quite define. Was it disappointment? Envy? Or perhaps just the realization that the distance between them was even greater than she had imagined. Organic chief, so that's what he meant. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. He wasn't offering to take her somewhere. He was explaining why he couldn't. He was letting her down gently. That's wonderful, Li Yu managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She picked up her bag, her fingers fumbling with the strap. I should really be going. Before she could escape, Lu Huaiji stepped forward. Actually, he said, his voice calm and clear, there seems to be a misunderstanding. He addressed the group gathered around them, his gaze sweeping over Ning Yuxiu and her friends, his expression unwavering. Li Yu wasn't trying to trap Li Fuzheng, or spread any rumors. She was simply reconnecting with an old friend. He turned to Li Fuzheng, his voice softening slightly. As for your promotion, congratulations. I'm sure Li Yu is happy for you. He then addressed Li Yu directly, perhaps you should tell him about your own recent achievement. Li Yu looked at Lu Huaiji, a flicker of gratitude warming her. His unexpected intervention, his quiet strength, gave her the courage to finally speak her truth. She turned to Li Fuzheng, her gaze meeting his directly. I'm getting married, she said, the words echoing in the sudden silence. Next month. The shock on Li Fuzheng's face was palpable. He stared at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. Married, he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. But to whom? To you, Li Yu said, her voice firm, finally free from the shackles of insecurity and doubt. If you'll still have me. She paused, her breath catching in her throat. About what you just said, please give me an answer as soon as possible. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cafe, a different kind of storm had broken, leaving in its wake a fragile, nascent hope. The soft click of the lock echoed in the quiet apartment. Li Yu stepped inside, the lingering scent of jasmine tea from her mother's favorite blend filling her senses. A quiet warmth settled in her chest, a stark contrast to the turbulent emotions that had churned within her just hours before. The evening had been a whirlwind, the unexpected reunion, the clash with Su Modi, the raw vulnerability of confessing her feelings to Li Fuzheng. Now, a fragile peace had descended, a tentative hope blooming in the aftermath. She glanced at Li Fuzheng, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the dimly lit hallway. He seemed lost in thought, his brow furrowed in a way that tugged at her heart. Tired? She asked softly, her voice barely a whisper. He turned, a gentle smile replacing the furrow in his brow. Just processing, he replied, his gaze lingering on her face. Everything happened so fast. Li Yu's heart fluttered. Was it possible? Could he finally understand, finally see the years of unspoken affection she had carried for him? She dared to hope, a tiny ember of optimism flickering within her. Me too, she confessed, a shy smile gracing her lips. I still can't believe, before she could finish her sentence, the sound of animated chatter erupted from the living room. Her mother, Li Qingxing, and Li Fuzheng's mother were deep in conversation, their voices a comforting symphony of familiarity. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the jasmine tea, creating a peculiar yet welcoming scent. They joined the two mothers, the initial awkwardness quickly dissolving into easy conversation. Li Fuzheng's mother, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, held Li Yu's hand, her grip firm and reassuring. Li Yue, she said, her voice laced with affection, Fuzheng has told me so much about you. Li Yu's cheeks flushed. What exactly had he told her? Her anxieties began to resurface. Did he portray her as a lovesick schoolgirl, a pathetic figure clinging to a childish infatuation? Li Qingzheng, ever the pragmatist, beamed at Li Fuzhen. "Don't you hate me very much?" she inquired, her tone playful yet laced with genuine concern. The memory of the blind date fiasco flashed through Li Yu's mind. Li Fuzhen chuckled, shaking his head. "Of course not, Auntie. I was just surprised." Li Yu watched the interaction, a sense of surreal joy washing over her. Just hours ago, she had been drowning in a sea of insecurity, convinced that her feelings would forever remain unrequited. Now, here she was, surrounded by the warmth of family and the burgeoning promise of a future she had only dared to dream of. As the evening progressed, the conversation flowed effortlessly, weaving through shared memories of childhood and the bittersweet nostalgia of high school days. Li Yu found herself stealing glances at Li Fuzhen, her heart skipping a beat each time their eyes met. His gaze held a depth she had never noticed before, a silent understanding that transcended words. Later, as they prepared to leave, Li Qingzhen pulled Li Yu aside, her eyes twinkling with a mixture of amusement and affection. "Congratulations to my baby daughter on her marriage," she whispered, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Li Yu's eyes widened. "Marriage? Mom, we haven't even give it time," her mother interrupted, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "I've never seen Fuzhen look at anyone the way he looks at you." A wave of warmth spread through Li Yu, chasing away the last vestiges of doubt. Could it be true? Could her lifelong dream finally be within reach? Back in their own apartment, the quiet hum of the city lights filtering through the window, Li Fuzhen turned to Li Yu, his expression serious. "Will you be jealous?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Li Yu's brows furrowed in confusion. "Jealous? Of what?" "Of all the attention I get as a pilot," he explained, a hint of self-deprecating humor in his tone. The flight attendants, the passengers, a soft laugh escaped Li Yu's lips. The insecurity she had felt earlier in the evening seemed like a distant memory. "I believe you," she said, her voice filled with a newfound confidence. "And even if I didn't, I wouldn't be jealous. Because I know," she paused, her gaze locking with his, "I know you only have eyes for me." A slow smile spread across Li Fuzhen's face, his eyes mirroring the warmth in her own. He reached out, his fingers gently tracing the curve of her cheek. "I only like you," he whispered, his voice husky with emotion. "Always liked you, Meng Liyue." In that moment, surrounded by the quiet intimacy of their shared space, all the years of unspoken longing, all the misunderstandings and missed opportunities, melted away. What remained was a pure, unadulterated connection, a silent promise of a future filled with love and happiness. Li Yu leaned into his touch, a sense of peace settling over her like a gentle blanket. The city lights twinkled outside, casting a soft glow on their intertwined hands, a silent testament to the love that had finally found its way home.